Good morning everybody, and thank you for attending this webinar. What I'm going to do is try and explain what the GData network monitoring tool does. You know that the version 14 will be released in the English version and the German version on the 17th of May. And the GData network monitoring tool is one of the new modules that will be included in the new version. If you have any questions, please use the questions section of the panel. I'm afraid when I'm doing the webinar, it's a bit difficult to actually answer the questions, so I'll try and answer your questions at the end of the webinar. You can also see in the handout section of your panel that the presentation is available for download. So let me begin. So what does the network monitoring tool actually do? What it's doing is it's collecting information from devices on that network relating to their response time, their update or uptime, and availability. Network monitoring, it isn't actually monitoring your network, it is monitoring the devices on your network. So it's not monitoring the speed of your network at all, or finding bottlenecks on your network. It can do this for various applications on your network. For example, a web server on your network, it can detect whether that is responding quickly enough, but it is more of a systems monitoring tool than a network monitoring tool, just so there is no confusion, because network monitoring tool is usually what is usually meant by that is a tool that measures the speed and reliability of your network. So we can collect information about the availability and uptime of devices on your network. So it's not only printers, switches, routers, it is also processes that are running on particular machines on the network. And what happens is that we can, I'll show you later on, we can set certain thresholds. For example, if your printer is running out of toner, for example, you can it will create a warning, and this warning can be seen in the dashboard of the Action Center, but it will also send you an email out to warn you that a certain event is below or above a threshold. Where do we actually get this information from? There are basically three sources that we get the information from. One of them is the Windows Management Instrumentation, which is a subsystem of all Windows operating systems. The other one is from SNMP. So SNMP is a protocol that is widely used to manage devices on the network, so things like routers, switches, printers, even servers will send out information about their status, and this information is collected by the GData monitoring tool. So how is this actually working? So if you, for example, would like to monitor local processes on a PC, when I say PC, usually if you're using a monitoring tool, you want to monitor your critical systems. It's highly unlikely that you're going to monitor your desktop systems. But for example, a critical server, you want to see, for example, how much CPU time is being used, how much RAM is being used. And in this case, you have to install the GData client on that machine to monitor those local processes. That GData client will then pass that information on to the management server, and the management server in turn passes that on to the GData Action Center. With the SNMP, this is a bit different. So in theory, if you wanted to just monitor SNMP, you could install the GData management server and a single GData client on that network. From this single GData client, you could collect information from all of your hardware devices on that network. So these SNMP will be collecting information from your Linux servers, routers, switches, printers, all this sort of thing. So just to reiterate, if you want to collect SNMP data, just one GData client would be sufficient on a machine to collect all of this data. If you want to collect local processes, then you must install a GData client on that machine that you want to collect the processes from. I've got someone talking in the background. I'm not sure why I'm actually getting this coming through because you're all on mute. I hope it's not disturbing you too much. So in the third source of data is the GData MMS events. So we can connect to a GData management server and collect the events from that management server. And here are some of the events that can be collected. For example, you can see how many exchange logs are coming in, client logs. And this data is then passed on directly from that management server to the GData Action Center. So first of all, it's not a standalone product. If anyone would like to use the monitoring tool, they must, of course, purchase one of the basic products, the antivirus, client security, or EPP. So it's an additional module for these products. And as I've just explained, a GData client, at least one GData client must be installed, and the MMS to collect this data. If one GData client is installed, then it can collect SNMP data only. If you want to collect data from local processes, then you must install a client on that PC. In the update manager, the monitoring flag must be set. You've probably seen this already in the update manager. The number of required metrics must be set. I'll explain a little bit later on what metrics are. So in the update manager, you can see here that we have this flag here for network monitoring. This must be set, and the metrics count must be entered in that window in the right hand side. And also a GData Action Center account must be created. So when you've done this, when you're starting the management server, you will get a window popping up telling you that the amount of metrics that have been enabled for that license. This is the console of version 14. You'll see that at the top here we now have an additional tab with the network monitoring. Clicking on this tab will take you directly to the Action Center. So it'll open a browser window and take you to that Action Center. So we require metrics to monitor certain events or processes. A metric is just a sensor. So this sensor is collecting this data that you have configured it for to collect. So if, for example, you want to monitor 10 different processes on one PC, then you require 10 metrics. These metrics, you'll find them in different categories. There are categories for devices, local processes, the management server. The management server is the GData management server, network printers, and SNMP devices. And within these categories, you'll find a whole lot of things that you can select that you can configure metrics for. For example, in local processes, you'll find a whole list of processes that you can monitor. And each process that you monitor requires a metric. So in the Action Center itself, you can see information for a certain period of time, or you can set a custom date to see that data that has been collected in that time period. At the moment, this data that is being collected, it can only be seen in these metric logs. I hope that in future it will be possible to actually export these logs. So if you're monitoring a device, for example, over a certain period of time, you won't have to go into the Action Center every time and scroll through all the logs to find that information you're looking for. But at the moment, that's the only method possible, is to actually look in the Action Center itself to see which alerts have been created. Also within the Action Center, you can create email groups. So any alerts that are created, they can be sent to certain recipients. So this is the dashboard itself. And what we see here is that we have, for example, we have our critical warnings. We just have warnings and the devices that are being monitored where everything is okay. You can add favorites to this dashboard. For example, if you want to see that use memory on a certain machine is displayed every time you open that dashboard, you can add this template to the Action Center dashboard. This is the first page of the Action Center. I'm afraid it wouldn't all fit on one screen. And below that, what you'll see is these logs, these warnings that are being created from monitored devices. So now we come to the interesting bit, our competitors and unique selling points. So first of all, what you're going to do is we're going to have a freemium model. You've probably heard about this already, that any new customers or customers upgrading to version 14 will receive 10 free metrics. So there are no known competitors offering antivirus and network monitoring. But if you just take network monitoring on its own, there are hundreds of competitors out there. There's a lot of freeware out there. There's a lot of shareware out there. As I said, if I listed all of the competitors, it would probably take about 10 slides to do this. There really are a hell of a lot of competitors out there. Even after asking the product manager what the USPs were, I'm afraid we got very little information. One of them was it's just simple to configure and use. And also metrics can be created on request. So if a customer requires a metric to monitor a certain event, then we can actually create this metric in, I wouldn't say a short period of time. What I would say, to actually create a metric, it doesn't actually take much time. I'm talking about a couple of hours. The problem is here that we've got to have the resources free to create that metric. So if a customer does require a metric, even though the amount of work involved only takes a couple of hours, it doesn't mean that we can actually create it in a couple of hours and make that available to everybody. So it all depends on the resources available at the time when that request is coming in. For me, and probably for most of you as well, the network monitoring is something completely new. So really that's why I can't say much about the competitors at all. Of course I can read about them on the internet, but this is something, a market that I don't really understand myself, and most of you probably don't understand it yourselves either. So you have to find out what the customers are saying about network monitoring when you demonstrate this product to them, to find out whether it is interesting for them at all. So I'm afraid that I can't. I'd like to give you more USPs for this product, but at the moment I'm just cannot do that. I just don't have the information. So let's leave the PowerPoint and go on to the Action Center itself. I'll probably have to log back in again. So we'll have a look at one of the Action Center accounts. This is, you see it's a beta version, but this one has actually got quite a bit of information in there. So logging into the Action Center, the email address you're using here and the password you're using, this is also the data that is used in the management server. So the management server can connect to that information. So that management server can connect to the Action Center. So you now see in the Action Center you have an icon here for the network monitoring. And this is what it looks like. So under your account, you can change your password or delete that account. You can change the language. How many languages are there? 6, 7, 8, 10 different languages. Okay, let's do something. Right, this shouldn't be happening, but it looks like I'll have to log in again. So we're back where we wanted to be. So we can see here in this window that 2 servers are connected to the Action Center. So I've got 2 management servers that are connecting to that management server. Under devices, this will actually be the number of clients that are attached to that management server for which a metric has been created and has been implemented. We'll go in a second into the metrics, so I can show you how to create metrics and configure the metrics. And here you add the metrics. That means you assign that metric to a certain device. So let's go to the metrics section, and these metrics have to be created for the processes or events that you want to monitor. And I've already created certain templates. For example, I want to monitor CPU time, but I'll create a new metric template. As I showed you before, we have certain categories, and here is a device category. So if I select the device category, then I can select the metrics for that device. Let's go to the local processes, and here again these are the processes that can be monitored. Then the management server, at the moment I've only got 2 metrics within that category. There will be, by the time of the release, there will be about 10 other metrics that you can select for that management server. On the network, for example, we have the HTTP request, so we can monitor web servers, for example, to see how quickly they're responding. Network printers, we can check the paper level and the toner level of printers. And SNMP devices. There won't actually be much under here, so really with any SNMP devices, that means routers, switches, whatever, we're just checking to see whether those devices are actually up and running. So once these metrics have been created, for example, I'll just select a local process on just, for example, memory page faults. You can give it any name you want to. I'll just give it a test name, a name test, and then you have a threshold value. So save that template there. And this threshold value you can define yourself. So I'll say if there are more than 10 faults a second, so I want it to be above that threshold. So if we go above this threshold, then an alert will be sent out, and I have to actually enable this alert, and I have to select the group of people to be notified when an alert has been sent out. And these metrics I can then assign them to certain devices on my network. So I select that metric, and here I can select which machine I want it to be set on. If I select a management server, you'll also see the groups that are on that management server, and you would, if for example, if I selected that server group, you would be able to select the clients within that server group, and you could assign this metric to one of those clients. But I'm actually going to assign this to the management server itself, so I select that management server and create that metric. So now all I've got to do is wait to see what happens when this, for example, these page faults go above this threshold. I will receive an alert per email when it reaches a critical state. Okay, that's all I wanted to show you at the moment. I'll see if there's any questions coming in. Okay, there's a few questions. When will the reference guide be available? This will be available when the product is released on, I'm not sure for Poland, but as I said, the English and the German version will be released on May the 17th, so the reference guide will be available at that time. Okay, the next question from Neela is the 10 free metrics, are they only for customers that upgrade to version 14 or also for all new business customers? They are for customers that we already have and are upgrading to version 14, and to any new business customers. So basically everyone will get the 10 free metrics. So the next question is, if I want to monitor a web server, what needs to be installed on the web server? So basically, if this is, it depends on the web server. If this is and also depends what you actually want to monitor on that web server. So if it's a Windows web server, as far as I understand it, you'd have to install that GData client on that web server itself, and then you'd have to monitor the. Let me look in the metrics again, and as we saw, I believe it's the actual network processes that we want to monitor. I'd set some up beforehand for visited websites, but you'd have to monitor the network processes on that machine itself. But I'll try and get a better answer for you than that. I don't actually know myself how we'd actually monitor that web server. You saw beforehand, I think HTTP requests is one of the things that we can monitor. So if that is the case, then we would install the GData client on any machine on that network, and those HTTP requests would be, as far as I know, sent out from that client to that HTTP server, checking on the response time. But I'll try and get a better answer for you. Okay, what about pricing? I can't tell you anything about pricing at all. That's something that Helmut would can tell you about. Okay, the next question, I'm curious if it is a web server, for example, Apache versus IIS. I don't actually know, to tell the truth. I presume, as I said, the only thing we have at the moment is the metrics to measure the HTTP request response site. So in that case, it wouldn't really matter if it's an Apache or IIS. Next question, can metrics be exported, imported? No, they can't, not at the moment, but it's a good, that's something that we could put in as a feature request. Of course, this is the first version, so there's a lot of things that could be modified or actually added to this network monitoring to improve it. But this is where we need feedback from customers to see what they actually are saying about it, to see whether this is an interesting option for them at all. At this stage, I just don't know. So are there any other questions? I'll just wait another couple of minutes to see if anything else comes in. Can we have accounts on the beta system at some point? I actually tried this yesterday to create an account on that beta Action Center, but it didn't work, so I presume they've actually deactivated that. But you can create an account with the actual live Action Center at the moment. That should also work. Okay. Does the GData client listen on standard SNMP ports for messages from other devices? What versions of SNMP are supported? Good question. I don't know. I presume it's all versions of SNMP. And whether it actually listens on a port or not, I don't know. It's that's also something I'd have to find out. I presume it will be on the standard port because there's no method of actually configuring this to listen on any other port. I will get an answer on that and pass it on to all of you. When will the Polish version be released? I don't know. Usually it's released several weeks after the English and the German versions have been released. So I would say about 4 weeks after that. So it looks like you didn't actually receive the email from Drago as when the versions will be released. I can also pass that information on to you. Okay, I've just got the answer popping up here. The Polish version will be released on the 31st of the 5th. So 31st of May, the Polish version will be released. According to Dragomir. Okay. So are there any other questions before I close the session? Okay, so there's nothing else coming in, so okay, there is a question coming in. Upgrades from example GData client security business. What do you actually mean with that question? Is it possible? Yes. The monitoring tool is just an additional feature to any of the business products. So it's just a case of activating it in the update manager to make it available for that product. And of course, it must be on version 14. Okay. I cannot connect the MMS to the Action Center GData, acgdata.de. How long ago did this happen? It'll take a time until that management server actually synchronizes with the Action Center, but usually within an hour that management server should be visible in the Action Center. So you've been waiting a day. I don't know. Then the only things I can think of is you've got to make sure that that license in the update manager has been set to use the network monitoring, that you have a number of metrics also set in the update manager, and then also make sure that the password and username that you're using in the management server is the same as the one in the Action Center. Does the client display an additional service onto the local PC to monitor? And if so, does this only happen if monitoring is enabled? This monitoring is available in all of the clients, and it'll only be activated if that client has been, if that license has been activated for network monitoring. So basically, it's like all of our products, they're all available in that client. It's just a case of whether they're actually activated or not. So it will not use the resources unless it is actually active. So once that network monitoring has been activated, only then will it use that resource from that client, the network monitoring part of that client. For the Action Center has one account, super admin or more, e.g. admin. No, for the Action Center there is basically just one account. With that account, let me just check that, but I believe, I'm not sure if you can actually create other users for that account. Yeah, and also the Action Center, it seems to be also changing every couple of days. You might find new features being added to that Action Center actually before we release the product. No, I can't see any method of creating other users within that Action Center. So it seems to be nothing else coming in, so I'll close the session now. As I said, this session has been recorded, so you will receive an email with a link to the recording of the webinar. So I'll just say thanks for joining and have a good day. Thank you. Goodbye.